assessment should be made of these, as well as the implications for local residents and having potentially transformers near their dwellings. We should also be consulting, we've said, residents with all the exact details of these proposals, and I would certainly like as well advice on the general safety of high voltage transmitters.
So your resolution, or your proposal, John,
yes,
you wish to suspend item 5.1.
Suspend and potentially redraft, yeah.
Is there a seconder for that proposal? Those in favour?
Can we have a debate about it first, maybe?
Yeah.
I must admit, Chair, I wouldn't support the proposition. I think the situation has obviously come to light since our last meeting, and as members of the public may not be aware of what we're talking about at the moment, because obviously it's important that these things are dealt with at a meeting in public, which is why this is on the agenda today. In effect, we have found out through the process that we have I think it's 11,000 volt cable that runs directly underneath the public toilets, which we were blissfully unaware of until now. Following that, obviously there was a meeting, National Grid came out to have a look at it on site and suggested that we need to get it moved in order to do any works to the public toilet area. I think the proposal as it stands at the moment is basically what I think we are needing to achieve tonight, rather than delay this, is to have a meeting with National Grid to look at what the options are. At the moment they've given us a broad brush approach as to what they think needs to be done. The Parish Council hasn't had a chance to really have that debate with National Grid, because none of us who met with National Grid were empowered to have that debate, because it was something that hadn't come through this council. So I think what we need to do this evening, and certainly I would, whether it's propose an amendment or we take the first vote forward and then vote on the second thing if it doesn't pass, would be, I think we need to have a decision that the working group for the building groups meet with National Grid, and potentially I think our architect as well on site, to look at what is on the ground, what the options are that we can actually look at, and then we need to report that back. Because until the parish has got that to decide on, I don't think they can. In terms of consultation with the public, obviously, were this to come back onto our next agenda subsequent to that meeting, that is an opportunity for members of the public who then will be aware of what's going on, because as I say, until now, the public have not known, because this was an item that hasn't been before the council previously. So I think that would be an opportunity to have consultation with the public at that stage. But I think if we simply was to remove this from the agenda today, all it does is set us back another month before we can do anything. And so I think we need to have that ability to move the process forward.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can we just have some clarity as to what exactly move things forward means? Because I think absolutely what you've said, have a meeting with National Grid, be absolutely clear firsthand what their concerns are, and they're not there to tell us what to do, but they're there to advise us, and then we have to make the decision and put it to them what we want to do based on the information that they're readily able to provide to us. I think that's hugely important. What I think John's concerns may be, and my concern certainly is that we're sort of, at this stage, looking at a proposal for rerouting before we actually understand the exact parameters of this opportunity or objective of National Grid. I think we need to have that clarity. So I think if what Bob is saying is the build team, the shop committee team, go forward and have that discussion. The terms of reference of that meeting need to be absolutely clear. We obviously aren't there to make decisions, but we bring that back for consultation. But I'd also want to understand the extent to which we feel that we will then go out to the electorate, as required under the regs, and actually have a sort of targeted discussion with people so that they understand exactly what we're going to propose, and then come back and resolve on the issue. That's kind of what I'm thinking Bob is suggesting, and I think what this is saying is something significantly different.
The proposal you're being asked to consider is whether the agenda item is removed rather than a full discussion on the actual project itself. I think that's where we're getting a bit confused.
Yeah.
Because what John is proposing is that we take it off the agenda and we don't have any further discussion on this until a later date. That is the proposal you're being asked at this stage to consider. Now, if that is not the proposal that's supported, then it remains on the agenda and we have a discussion about it. So that's really what you've got to decide now, is whether it's...
But what is Bob suggesting then? Because Bob seems to say, let's go out and get more information and then bring it back to the committee.
What I've said is that I would not support the recommendation that's been put forward to withdraw it, because I think we need to have further ability to take this forward with a discussion with National Grid to look at what the options actually are. Were we to remove it from the agenda today, we can't do that. We're stuck. There's no proposal for us to move forward. And we, as the working party, have no authority to have any further negotiations with National Grid. You're simply cutting us off at the knees and saying we can't debate this. Now, this is on the agenda today because this is the first opportunity we've had to bring this to the full council.
Okay.
Can I also say something about the agenda? The agenda is set by the clerk, and you will know that when I set an agenda, it's done 3 days at least before it's published. At that opportunity, you have the opportunity to say, actually, we don't think that should be on there, or we would like something else on there instead. That didn't happen on this occasion. The first we knew about this desire to remove this item from the agenda was 1 day before the meeting. That is not acceptable. This agenda is set at this meeting. It's in tablets of stone. So unless this council decides that this proposal is a worthy one, then it stays on the agenda. It's as simple as that.
Okay, can I just come back on that? But it does say a rerouting option requires council resolution. So what is on the agenda in its current format is requiring a resolution. And what I believe is being mooted here is the requirement that we have the power to go forward and speak to National Grid. And that I don't have an issue with. But I think my understanding of what John is saying is that actually the format, the wording of this is quite narrow. And actually that's
So the resolution could say, once we got onto that item,
okay.
the resolutions we defer it. You could say, well, actually, the resolution I'm making this evening is that we should defer this item, but you're not saying that. What you're actually saying is, I'm going to remove it from the agenda. I want to remove it from the agenda, and that is not appropriate.
It says a rerouting option requires council resolution. So this is about resolution.
It requires one in the future, not now.
Okay.
Well, we're only going to say exactly that. If you read what it says there is a proposal by National Grid to remove and relocate a large power supply cable from under the current toilet block, which there is because this is what's come to light. And it simply says a rerouting option requires a council resolution due to its effect on the parish council land. So in effect, it's opening up the ability for us to have the debate tonight about what the resolution is going to be or what that entails. There's no decision tonight about selling land or anything else. What we need from this is a resolution as to how we take this thing forward.
Okay, can I just ask one question though? You spoke with National Grid without authority of the council. What difference is it now that we don't have the power to go and speak to National Grid when that happens?
And tell me, please, Sarah, what you would want me to have done. We were alerted one day that, you know, you're shaking your head, John. The fact is I was alerted one day and I was told that the best thing to do is to speak to the National Grid. Now, National Grid, as it happens, came the following day. I was expecting that to be a month away.
I hear that, but
what did you expect me to do on that day?
I expect you to pick up the phone and speak to me and say, as you're part of the shop committee group, can you come to this meeting and ask Melina to
But we didn't know even what they were wanted to speak about. We had no knowledge of it.
But neither did... Okay.
Well, I think it's immaterial. The question is, does this parish council...
It's certainly not. It certainly is not. There are two people here that are part of working groups that were not invited to said discussions. Please explain that to us.
I can't explain it to you.
You can't explain it to us. Okay.
Because I was asked...
Noted.
Right, okay, well look, the best thing to do is to vote on this.
Okay, that's fine.
Whether you want, if we're going to remove this from the agenda, please vote on it.
I would like to point out that if this is not approved at this point, the National Grid have the power to enforce a change on a future occasion should any work be undertaken. So make from that what you will.
You really must stick to this proposal that John's put on the table. He's put a proposal down to remove this item off the agenda. Is that proposal that John's putting forward supported by this council? Can I have hands?
Yes, can I have show of hands, please?
For those that support John's proposal to remove it from the agenda.
I think given what Bob said, I'm happy that we have a discussion. I was just concerned that resolution would be prepared tonight in the format that's been.
So, can you just place your hands up, those people who are actually supporting John's proposal? You're not supporting it, John?
I think we have concerns, but I think from what Bob has said, a discussion is fine.
Okay. So it remains on the agenda. Fine.
But let's.
I think you've proved the point by the discussions you just had, the ambiguousness of what was put down by the point that people are asking lots of questions. So I will
Chairman, I don't want to make too big a point of this, but with the greatest respect, to some extent, it has to be ambiguous at the moment. It had to be an item on the agenda to open the ability for us to have a discussion. We as councillors were aware of what was going on because it was circulated to us in confidence. The rest of the public would have no idea. So if we put something on there which was saying about disposal of land or whatever, no one would know what we were talking about and why. This has been put on the agenda to open the discussion tonight, to enable us to move forward and to take hopefully go forward together as a parish council. But I think it is if we're going to start trying to analyse every dot and comma of everything that's on the agenda, I think we're in danger of going down a rabbit hole.
Thank you. So it remains on the agenda. So effectively, 5.1 is the discussion point now for that item on the agenda. Do you think we should explain to those members of the public who are actually here what it actually is we're discussing? Would that be helpful?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Basically, what has happened? Do you want me to explain this?
Yes,
Okay. As you probably know, we've been going through the design and architecture stage of the process with Paul Martin, and he's getting very close to a conclusion on that now. During his discussions, he had to, as a matter of course, approach all the utility companies, one of which, of course, was National Grid. And highlighted when he came up with that was the fact that there was this 11,000 volt cable running from the far side of Brent Street right the way across, joining up with the transformer down the bottom end of the village green. But it runs underneath the toilet block. And what they were saying is now not acceptable to undertake any construction on that toilet block, whether it be demolition or building, whilst that 11,000 volt cable remains there in situ. So he came to and met up with a couple of us just to explain what the issue was. Okay, and he explained to us that it could be overcome. It would have to be done before any building work started, but it could be rerouted, and it could go to a small substation on a piece of land probably the size of a car parking space. So you imagine one of the car parking spaces out there, they put a substation in and they reroute it around so it's no longer under that building. Okay? He subsequently came back with a couple of plans on where he thought it could go or where it should go. And we've got to the stage now as a council where there's a couple of key issues about this, because we can't touch that toilet block at the moment at all for doing any work whilst that 11,000 volt cable remains under that building. We've been told that by National Grid. If we want to do any drainage work, which frankly is sadly in need of doing with that toilet block, we couldn't touch it. And so therefore we have to some extent a white elephant toilet block anyway, whatever happens. So what the council need to now decide as a council is whether, given consideration to that, whether we should allow National Grid one parking space size of plot of land, because they want title deed to it. Leasing it to them is not an option. They require to have it as part of their portfolio of land. And if so, then we would then need to go ahead with National Grid and talk to them about exactly where this planned rerouting would go to on the car park, which space they're preferred. And there's a couple of options, and I can show those in a minute on the planned. Sorry, Sarah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So there's an absolute requirement that we have to move this cable.
Yes.
Okay. So no options, we have to move the cable.
Well, the options we have is where it should go.
Okay.
We could, if we wanted to, my understanding is that if we left it absolutely the status quo,
Yeah.
did nothing with the toilet block, just left it as it is, did no drainage work on it, or anything that upset the foundations of the property, then probably they will just let it ride for a while. But at some stage, they will come back to us and say it doesn't meet requirements, and it will need to be rerouted.
Why is something as important as this not on our asset register? It's hugely
Well, the
important.
toilet block's on our asset register.
No, the cable.
No one knew it.
Well, how would I know? I didn't know that.
It didn't
So
come
no
to-
one knew at any point. So
No.
we don't have any duty
No.
to know that there is a cable,
Well,
11,000.
whether we have a duty or not, I don't know, but the fact is we don't know, and we didn't know.
We don't
So-
know it was under when they put the game smoker in the corner. They could have gone through it. No one ever knew then because it's not that deep.
I mean, I get the, all right, so I get
Yeah.
we don't know, but I think it's highly worrying that we don't know these things.
Yeah.
And
Do
that's-
also bear in mind, we have a transformer down the
No,
bottom
I'm
of
aware of
the
that.
green,
Yeah.
which is far nearer the play equipment than anything they're proposing to put on the car park. You know, it's actually next door to the trim trail, for heaven's sake.
Are they proposing to put on the car park, or is that an option? Just
That's
to
an
be
option.
absolutely
It's
clear.
an option.
Okay, is one of a number
Well,
of
there's,
options.
how many options are there? You look at that car park and
I
how
don't
many
know
options have you got?
because we
You
haven't
know?
spoken first hand to National Grid, so I don't know what options there are. And I'm being told is that the proposal is to put in a car park,
Well,
which causes
If
concern.
you look at the site layout, you've got a house one side of you,
Yeah.
you've got potentially a shop the other side. They won't go across the road, so that then restricts you to the car park and the village green, effectively. So somewhere on that plot of the village green and car park will be a suitable site. Now where that is still yet to be discussed with them, but there will be one on, and sooner or later, whether this council agrees to it now or in the future, at some stage there will be one there.
And that's interesting because I just know from previous experience, today certain cables and pipes will not be permitted to be built under property, under land, but the fact that it's there, they're not going to go and dig up every property
No.
and reroute it because it's there. So it's just understanding the extent to which they are actually telling us, if not now, it will happen and when it will
And that
happen.
is precisely the reason why we need to meet with
Absolutely.
them
No,
and
okay.
discuss it.
Yeah, okay.
And I was going to say, we know there are issues with the drains for this toilet, and we know there are major problems, and that's going to have to be done. So we, it's like you said, we have a white elephant of a toilet block. So that cable has to be dealt with now, whether it's for the shop or not. That toilet block is a problem with the cable.
And this is not a suggestion it doesn't happen, this is about a mooting that the proper process is followed for it to happen, that's all. That's all.
Yeah.
So that's why we feel able, entitled to ask questions.
Yeah.
We should be able to do that.
So if I may, Deputy Chair, I just want to be crystal clear here, crystal clear, that we have to move that cable as part of our building this year.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's absolutely.
And we have that potentially, or we can get that in writing.
If we ask for it in writing, they will give it to us in writing. That's absolute. They've said to us right from the word go, you won't be building on that site until we've rerouted. And in any event, any developer wouldn't want to touch it, frankly. If you knew would you want to touch it with 11,000 volt cable under a building? Sorry, I wouldn't.
I think the concern goes back to how much is this shop bill costing the village. I think that
The
that's
cable isn't the shop build, it's the drains, it's the toilet.
That I hear, that I
It's
hear.
the whole
no,
thing.
I hear that. But I think what we're talking about here is the shop build, and we've moved on materially from where we were.
Can I just say, first and foremost, I would seek a signed hard copy letter absolving the parish council of any financial liability regarding siting of the transformer and any reparation of groundwork. So that puts the ball in their court.
Do you want to say something?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, I think you can say
Yeah,
that
can you say that again? Sorry.
I would seek a signed hard copy letter absolving the parish council of any financial liability regarding siting of transformer and any reparation of groundwork.
Financial liability, what do we mean by that? I don't understand.
That
The cost of removing it, of rerouting it.
It would be moved, but not at our cost.
Okay, so what's the value of the land that they have then taken up freehold title to? That's the value, and that's what we're giving up. So there is value, there's consideration. We give them that to enable and facilitate.
But if it's got to be moved, we've got a set number of options. If it has to be moved, then we're going to have to give up a piece of land. If this is not to do with the shop build, if we say the drains collapse on the toilet, that's not the shop build. We have to move the cable.
I hear that. It's fine.
So one way or another.
I hear that. I'm asking questions so that I can understand, so that I be able to make the right decision when we come to vote. That's all. So I do hear that. And it's just understanding the requirement to actually, it must be moved. So that's all. And I think we should be free to ask questions. That's the purpose of it.
Does anyone else have any comments at all?
We've moved forward on this shop over the last sort of 2 years, and we've got to a situation where we've agreed to build a community shop. We've been through all of the very, very extensive loan negotiations. We've had numerous council discussions, and I think now we have reached the point where, frankly, we've currently already committed to £11,000 worth of costs on this project without laying a brick in the ground. And I think you must, as a council, surely think very carefully about the cost that's been incurred so far.
Firstly,
And how that takes us for the future.
Firstly, I do think very seriously about it. Secondly, we've committed. We haven't actually committed. Those costs will not be expended unless we continue. So all of the 11,000 has not been committed to.
All of it will be committed because Charles Fleming will charge his fee whether he executes it or
No,
not. Well, you say he won't, but I would need to get that from him.
So
But certainly Paul Martin will.
Well, Martin may well have done that, but the commitment is a budget so far, and the commitment I would suggest is lower than that, just so that we're not misleading anyone, that's all.
I still think as a council we're committed to £11,000, honestly.
And I also believe that the decision that was made previously has significantly and materially changed. So whilst we have made a decision in the past, I still think we should be open to ensure that we take stock of any new issues that come to light. That's part of any project, and that's the part of any committee, and we should be entitled to raise questions and to ask what we need to know.
It should be pointed out to members of the public as well that actually this is of no cost to the council apart from the relinquishing of a small piece of parcel of land.
Well, hang on,
so
what's actually changed? Are we seeing the cost of the shop?
Beg your pardon, you had your moment to speak before the meeting. Please refrain from interrupting the meeting.
I think that, if I may, Deputy Chair,
Yes.
I totally disagree with what Owen's saying. We are talking about giving away freehold land in Brent Knoll, which is incredibly precious. We're also talking about giving away access rights to said freehold land, and the future implications for not just us, but other generations. It's a massive, massive question, and we seem to be in a massive rush just to dust over things, keep things confidential, and move swiftly on. And that concerns me immensely.
John, I just don't understand what you're on about, because you've been told already the cable's got to be moved, right?
I would question, and I am going to ask to see that in writing, I would question whether that is actually
so
true.
will you change your voice then once it comes back and says in that letter that it's got to be moved? What would you say then? Would you still...
It's a hypothetical question. If you could produce a letter that says 100% this cable must be moved to build this shop, absolutely.
No, it's not just to build the shop, is it? The toilets need repairing, right? That's what they're trying to get to you. If the shop is non-existent, right, say the shop's non-existent, yeah, the toilets still need repairing. They cannot do nothing to the shop, the toilet, sorry, because once you put a backhoe or a digger on 11,000 volts, the whole village goes up, yeah? So that is what they're trying to say to you, the toilets need repairing, yeah? Because there's 11,000 volts cable underneath there, that the drains can't cope with it no more.
I'm sorry, you lost me. The toilets need repairing.
Yes, the drains. No, the drains. So that's where the cable needs redirecting and rerouting somewhere
Can I
else.
just tell you about the toilet? Basically what's happened, Aquaplast have been out with this on 2 or 3 occasions now, and they've done temporary jetting. On both occasions they said this is a very short-term measure, you're going to have to deal with the drainage issue sooner rather than later, because actually eventually you'll have to take the toilets out of service. because there is major drainage issues underneath the toilet block. So that's what will need to happen at some stage in the near future. If we did nothing to the toilet block now, if we didn't demolish it, we would need to do something with the drainage issues of the toilet block, which wouldn't be allowed because National Grid have already told us we can't meddle with the underneath of the toilet block building. So that's just what A is trying to say to you. It's just that's the drainage part of it that we need to consider. That's just a fact. There's no argument on that. That's a fact.
Just not.
When did they say that?
When they insist.
I think there's, I can understand the comments being made about land has a value, and of course land has a value. But I think one of the things we obviously have to do as a council is look at the balance of those values. In effect, if we were to take this forward as was being proposed by National Grid of moving the cable, it frees up our land that's currently now in effect blighted by this cable, so that we are able to do with as we need to. It also potentially enhances the security of the power supply, because obviously one of the things they were saying was we've got this cable obviously running under the green, we've got 2 transformers, one at either end, and by them doing this substation in effect in the middle, National Grid seem to think this actually is an enhancement to what's there. So there is a benefit to the village in that respect as well. So I think there will be a balance of benefits and costs, and I think we have a danger, I think, in trying to say that we're somehow losing, or if this is having an extra cost to the project. I'm struggling with, because ultimately, when I first heard this National Grid thing, I must admit I went pale, because I was thinking we're going to be liable for shifting this cable, and knowing some of the costs that undertakers have charged other developers elsewhere for moving their cables, I thought that could be the end of us doing anything on this whole area. The fact that National Grid are prepared to actually fund the works and to get it all sorted, I think is something that is worth bearing. And as I say, I think saying that a piece of land that is a car park size, it has a huge value when it's part of a car park. It is not something that is going to be developed by the local, by the parish council. We're not suddenly going to be building houses on the car park, and never are we likely to. So I think the opportunity cost of a piece of land is limited. And obviously we would again have to take into account the effect it has on car parking. But theoretically, once that car park space is taken up and the shop moves, the area that's currently held by the shop is made available for car parking. So I think it's as broad as it's long.
Melina.
The figure that nearly made your eyes water to move the cable, how much was that?
Someone I know who had to try and move it was a telecoms box that they were near, that they were having to shift, and that was about £350,000.
National Grid actually, my understanding is that they will reroute at their cost. That's quite common practice. They don't get charge. They have certain subsidies that they provide for certain works they undertake, so that's not uncommon, just to put that into some perspective.
John.
So if I may be allowed to counter, I spent some time today actually talking to National Grid. I was so interested in what was going on, and I wanted to have all of my facts, all of my detail in front of me. And I'll tell you why I contacted National Grid, is I have concerns about my child, Joshua, playing at the park with a transformer. That's the basis of my conversation. I want to have my facts straight on safety of transformers near parks. There are a number of issues of having transformers near parks. Kids are naughty. They break into transformers. They climb cables. We have a transformer here in the corner. A child could climb said transformer. It's unlikely, but they could do it. And that was my concern. I know how naughty my children are, and other children are. I would really like us to explore whether that is the best option for us here. And I would yet again like to just put on record that this cable must be moved. I pass it over to you.
obviously be able to get that confirmation from National Grid. I very much doubt that will be an issue. And that we can simply say that we require that, actually, as part of the process, that we require that letter from them. And if that letter were to be provided, would that satisfy the requirements? That's the point. That's the thing you've got to ask yourself as a council. Would I be satisfied if we had a letter from National Grid outlining the reason why it's the only option to deal with this matter?
I think there's the option, but there's also the location. And I think the location, if you are to transfer land, as we know, there is an obligation to have that valued. We need evaluation so we can assess the true cost of it. We'd also need to put it back to the electorate. And I think that's my only concern, that we actually follow a process and we do that. Because I think that's the right way to do it.
And your reason for putting it out to the electorate is what exactly?
Because I think it's a village
Civil
asset.
standing orders.
I think first it's a regulation that would be bound by, and secondly, it's a village asset. And I think when we're dealing with village assets and we're bound by our regulations to adhere to a requirement to consult with the electorate, I don't think it's in our power to just make a decision to transfer that land without following the process.
Aid.
You're talking about that, so 6 months' time, we shut the toilets down, there'll be no toilets in the village. That's what's going to happen. If the drains are not done, or seen to, that's what will happen to the toilets. So you'll be losing an asset in the village already straight away, wouldn't you?
What do we have to do to
Well, the drains, take all the sewage to the main sewage on the road, So these drains, that's the ones that need repairing. So before they do anything to repair them, they've got to dig up the ground. So where's the cable? Right where the drains are. So they need to get to the drains, but they can't because of the cable. An 11,000 volt cable, and you're not allowed nowhere near it. So that's why it needs doing.
to enable?
So you're going to lose the
Through the
toilets.
chair. Yes, Sarah.
I'm just wondering, to enable the drains to be mended, I'm sure that there would be some provision with National Grid. They could possibly turn off the cable to enable us to take work.
That's the main power to the whole
Well,
village.
they would have some agreement potentially. I mean, we haven't explored it. That's what they have to do to be able to be removed anyway.
We are talking about
Please,
two separate
sorry.
sorry, Deputy Chair.
Yes.
Can I ask, are we not just utilising a parking space in a different way? It's a parking space that will no longer be for cars, as currently we have parking spaces which are no longer for cars because the shop is on it. We're just using a car parking
It's not my
space
decision to
for
make
something different.
Yes, Bob.
I think I just heard Sarah saying it's not her decision to make, it's the villages, and that's I would have to disagree. Ultimately, if you look at our standing orders, and I tell you, not standing orders, the financial regulations, it does say including an adequate level of consultation with the electorate. That does not mean going out for a referendum, that does not mean organising public meetings, that means this council deciding what it feels is an adequate level of consultation. And as long as we have gone potentially on and I think again it has to be proportionate. If we were talking about disposal of the village green and building a housing estate on it, I think I would be quite keen for us to consult widely with the village and take that into account. This is the utilisation of a car parking space. I think if we went down the line that we talked about earlier, which in effect is having a resolution that enables the building working group to meet with National Grid and our architects to discuss the options that we have going forward, we then report that back to a public meeting which is advertised and that people have the ability to come and address us at. Personally, I think that would cover us in terms of our regulations, in terms of a consultation. So I think that we need to be careful we don't try and abdicate our responsibility onto the village. We are elected to represent members of this village and to have a balanced discussion in fact of what are the pros and cons of both this site in terms of what it could be used for, what its value is, but also in terms of the benefits that it can bring to the village should we follow the path that's being suggested by National Grid. So I'm happy to make that as a proposal if there's anyone who is willing to second.
Lalina, John.
Everybody's saying, oh, it's just a parking space. How many times have we had members of the public come here to complain about people parking in front of their driveway or blocking off their drop curb. Parking is an absolute pain in this village. We need more parking spaces, not less.
If we could, we'd be only too pleased. John, next.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. There are two issues at stake here. There is the space or spaces, okay, space or spaces and access around, and then there is the access to our car park and to our village green. Okay, there are two issues. Both have value. By making a decision and changing this, we change the fundamental dynamic of that space. It is not just a car parking space.
It is just a car parking space if we have to move the cable, and I think what we're trying to establish is if that cable has to be moved in order to do anything. It doesn't matter if it's the shop, if it's maintenance on the toilets, if it's to maintain the existing toilet block by having to do the drains, which we know, which Owen has just said has to be done, and we've been told we can't do those drains without moving that cable. Now, if the cable has to be moved, it's got to go somewhere. Otherwise, we lock up the toilet block, we say, right, that's fine, we'll just look at it forever, because it's got a cable under it. So we have no functioning toilets, and we keep the car parking spaces. It's one or the other. If the cable has to be moved to do anything, then it's got to go somewhere. And if it's just a car parking space, it's just a car parking space.
I believe I would call a halt to the meeting once somebody wants to address us.
I just want to say that I've got a bit of knowledge on fixing sewers, and I know that Wessex Water fixed sewers, even main sewers, without digging. They have technology of spiral pipes that go in, metal pipes, and then they screw it in, so drains can be fixed without digging. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I resume the meeting. Sarah?
Yeah, I think the question of whether it's just a car parking place for whatever purpose is one that needs to go out to we need the village to tell us how they value it. We also need to get a valuation as a regs. But I agree with what Bob is saying. I think it needs to be proportionate. I think as long as there's consultation. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I will ask you questions so I understand what my mind needs to be understanding before I can make a decision. That's all I'm saying. And if we need to understand, does it definitely have to be rerouted? Can we mend the sewage without actually having to reroute the pipe? So is it absolutely required at this point? And we need to go and follow due process and go out to the electorate. And I think you're absolutely right that in a proportionate manner. I'm not suggesting that we do it and we have a referendum and all the rest of that, but they have to have knowledge and have the ability to represent their position. It's their asset that we are custodians of and that we manage. And I think that's important. That's all I'm saying.
I believe Bob has made a proposal. Would you like to?
Can you say what that proposal
Yeah,
is?
basically what I was proposing was that the parish council authorises the buildings working group to meet with National Grid and our architect. I think would be useful to have at the same time to discuss the options and to report back in effect on the options that we have before us in terms of locations.
Can I have a seconder for that? Can I?
Yeah, we've got a second. So all those in favour, basically.
Yeah.
8. And that's you.
Any against? Yeah, were there any against? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
One abstention.
Thank you. Part 2 is the independent value report from Stephen & Co. on the leasing and rental terms for the community shop on completion of the building. A resolution to agree the appropriate rental level for the community shop once built. Would you like to start
John,
this?
did you want to say anything on that?
Yeah,
before
if I may,
that item?
Yeah. So I'd also like to ask that to be looked at. On the basis that we can't really proceed due to said developments in March, if got no overall cost of the land and impact of the land, which is not being valued. And we do need to consult with our parishioners on these new developments. We need to consider our next steps and options.
So your proposal is that that item is removed from the agenda?
Yes.
So do we have a seconder?
Is removing item 5.2 from the agenda. Seconder, Sarah.
Can I have a show of hands
To
that
support.
Again, I'm sorry, can we have a discussion?
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Chair, all right. I mean, again, I hear the proposal. We had some proposals previously about what the rent was like to be on this unit should it go ahead, subject to everything else that's got to happen in the meantime. It was then proposed at a previous meeting that we should go off and get a commercial valuation as to what the commercial rent would be for that, on the basis that we could then assess that as to whether or not we were able to say to the village either that we were giving the right rent or that we were giving a discount and justifying why we were giving a discount. I find it hard to understand why we are looking at deferring this again, because in terms of this situation, again, we know what the recommendation has been from the valuer, which I think, can we say publicly what's in here?
There is.
Okay. So he was talking about 5,200 was a commercial rent, but suggesting it might be 6,000 as an opening offer, so that's the annual.
That area there for the public to see, that's that
Yeah.
bit there, number 2.
Previously we talked about, and I think when there have been discussions with the shop, there had been a figure of 3,000 that was talked about, and then a 10% upgrade per year for a number of years. I mean, my own view would be, based on the recommendation he's made, we knew that this was not a commercial rent that we were going to be putting forward. We were trying to do this to have a village facility that would continue when a commercial project wouldn't actually work in the village. I think the figure that we were originally given of the 3,000, which is in effect a 50% discount over the market rent, is not unreasonable in that sense, bearing in mind particularly, as I say, the step up of 10% every year gets it to 4,500 by the 5th year anyway. And so my feeling would be, my recommendation would be that we go ahead with what was originally talked about, which was originally accepted by the shop. And that in terms of, I know there was a request from the shop for a rent-free period. I think bearing in mind it is a discounted rent that we're looking at. I don't think I would be looking for a rent-free period, but what I would be suggesting is that we start charging the rent from when the shop actually opens, rather than we charge them rent when they're actually fitting out. But that would be my proposal.
Okay, two things. So we actually resolved to secure a market rent value for the premises. We didn't actually get that. What we procured was actually a rent for the premises to be used as a community shop. So it's not a benchmarking exercise anymore. We've actually moved to somebody actually advising on what the rent should be for a property, with all the relevant discounts for the fact that the use would be one that was not for profit, and there may be voluntary workers, etc. So I believe 5,200 represents the figure that we should adopt for that reason. It's not one that we should have benchmarking. That's what we asked for, and had we got that, we then would be able to be transparent and accountable and make the relevant discounts on the basis that this is a community project. That's not what we, unfortunately, what we got, but the valuer put his neck out and actually went for something different. I don't know quite what the reason was because I didn't see it. So my view is it should be 5,200. The original 3,000 was based on a figure in the accounts that we then found out to be incorrect. And it was certainly not one that was agreed. It was discussed briefly at the meeting, the legal meeting, but we didn't have how to agree. It was always going to come back to council. So that would be my position with regards to the advice that's been sought and how we deal with that. The rent-free period, I think, Bob, you're absolutely right. I think as long as the shop act reasonably, and I have absolutely no doubt they will do, in actually fitting out in a reasonable, timely manner, then I think it is appropriate. What you normally have a rent-free period for is to allow someone to actually fit the shop out. So I think 3 months, 6 months is irrelevant, but I would say 2 weeks to a month would be something more in keeping with a shop of this nature. But I agree, it should be, a discussion should be had as to what time they think it would take to fit the shop out, and I would support that proposal.
Anybody else? Comments?
Any other comments at all? Yes.
I think that we should keep the rent as low as possible to give them a good start, and I would think more like the 3,000 that we originally discussed, so that there would be an opportunity maybe to take on a paid member of staff. It's like we said, this is a community project. We're trying to get this going for the community, and the best possible chance of getting them going is to give them a leg up at the beginning. There's a lot of volunteers putting their time out there. It's not people trying to make a profit, and I think, a lower rent would be beneficial for the community.
The shop is evidently making a hefty profit though. They announced their figures in the UKN news, and their bank accounts are looking very healthy. I don't see why the council taxpayers should subsidise this any more than is absolutely necessary.
To be
The
fair,
valuation is 5,200 for a community shop. That should be the figure.
but to be fair, I suppose to put the case, I mean, we went to obviously a survey last year, and it was put very clearly to the public what the likely impact was likely to be on the council tax for this, and there was overwhelming support for that. So in a way, it's very difficult to argue against that. I mean, 95% of the people in this village that came to the event supported the small increase in council tax.
But it wasn't 95% of the village that came to the event.
But that was their choice. If they felt strongly, they could have come.
Yes, John.
In 2023, we find ourselves in a completely different place in 2023. I'm going to be really honest with people around this table. I'm struggling to pay my bills at home, okay? Things have changed so dynamically in 12 months. I, like a number of people in this village, are struggling to pay their bills, okay? We have no overall cost of this project, okay? People around this table disagree with me about the value of the land and value of the access rights, which is just one element of what we're discussing, okay? And I'd like to just throw out there, a figure of £3,000 was thrown into the air like confetti last year. On what basis? Which is why I push for a valuation. I was involved with this project, okay, and I'd sit very passionately. I was one of the founding members. I'm looking at people across the way who I worked hour after hour with, and I know they did as well to get it up and running. So I am a believer in this project. I voted for it. However, things have changed, things have moved on, and we need to stop and draw breath and look at, is this good value, okay, for the villagers? Give everybody a chance to look at this and to look at the facts put in front of us. As I understand it, the shop pays a higher figure already and potentially could pay a higher figure in the future. We've got this figure of £3,000 out of the air, and we now have a valuation of £5,200 as commercial rent. If the project folds tomorrow, we could go out and look at Spar or Tesco's, whoever it is, can come out, and we have a figure now on paper that says potentially that shop will be worth £6,000. I hope it never happens. I hope the shop does really well, and we don't go to that. Commercial places like that. I love the fact that we have this village. We have to look at value for all villagers.
Does anyone else wish to make a comment?
Just to be absolutely clear, if you read the regulations, there is the word value for money throughout many provisions, and I know that I have been put to task on the question of whether or not we look at this in terms of a return or value, and being told very clearly this is a community project and therefore that does not come into the criteria. I would have to disagree with that, and I think we absolutely have a duty as councillors to this village and to taxpayers that we do consider value for money in every aspect of this project. And that could be the benefit, that it's not just financial, but it's the beneficial value. We have to put it, and we have to make it proportionate and balanced.
Bob?
Yeah, I totally agree with those comments that Sarah made. It is about value for money, and it is that community value as well as financial value. I think my reason for going with the figures as we've got is because one of the things we want to ensure is that this shop becomes established and is operational. We know that the village very much wanted the return of the post office side of things. We know that's something the shop are trying to achieve. if they go down that route, that's probably going to incur them costs in terms of potential staffing. That's something they will need to sort out in the future. That's not for us to get involved with. But I think the ability to have the service that the shop provides is a key element of value for money. It's not purely about pounds, shillings and pence. And also, we do need to, in terms of John's comment, and I totally understand that, but in terms of people's council tax bills, I think I'm right in saying the parish council is £125 per annum, something like that sort of ballpark. So the marginal difference that is going to be made to people's individual council tax is negligible.
Right, we need to move on.
Well, we kind of lost a little bit of direction because we were originally voting on, or we were putting a proposal on whether we should remove the agenda. Well, we actually moved on from that because we've actually discussed it. So it's on the agenda, we've discussed it. So now it's a question of whether there's a proposal on the table, really, by anybody.
Marlene.
I propose we set the rent at £5,200 because that's the valuation we've been given for a community shop.
I second that.
Sarah.
I second that.
Second that. Who supports?
Can I see who wishes to support that? And those against? Are there any other proposals regarding a figure?
Pretty much all of them.
So I'd like to make a proposal, sorry.
Sorry.
I'd like a proposal we defer the decision this meeting to gain further facts about the overall cost of the project.
Can I have a seconder for that?
Are you suggesting as an agenda item, basically? Is that what you're asking? We just voted on. We just voted on a proposal put forward. Are you making a new proposal, or are you
making a new proposal that we defer any decision until a future council meeting?
So, okay, so you're making a proposal.
Sarah's vote. Can I have a show of hands for that?
3. Against that proposal?
Bob. Against?
Sorry.
I'll happily make a proposal again, which was that we go with the £3,000 per year, that we look at no holiday in that sense, but we look at the rent to commence when the shop opens.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Can we just note how many people have supported it that have run the shop committee or had the shop have an interest?
Chairman, I mean that's totally out of order. Trying to members have declared, members have publicly declared their interest at the beginning of this meeting. I think it is unfair to try and put extra pressure on members to put them into a position.
I just wanted to, because I'm not sure who they were at, but that's
It's
fine.
immaterial whether they're
Okay, that's
actually in the
fine.
shop.
That's fine.
Completely. Okay.
We have
So-
a proposal from Bob.
For a rental of £3,000 per annum to start off with no rent for a period. That's the proposal. Yeah?
And with the rental to commence when the shop opens.
Rentals commence when the shop opens.
Valuation in front of you. Sorry, Deputy Chair. I cannot believe you have a valuation in front of you which you are totally disregarding, that we've paid money for as a council, and we're just throwing it out. Yeah, actually, this is right.
And again, Sharon, we've had this debate, but I would just point out to John that when we had the discussion about the valuation, and you put it forward, it was said that that would be a guide that we could take into account, and then if we went to the village to explain why we hadn't taken that, then we would have to explain it. That is exactly what we're doing this evening. It was not put forward by yourself as a proposal that we would go out for evaluation and we would be bound to take that recommendation. Members have had the debate this evening, and it's up for members to make their decision.
Lena.
The valuation that we thought we were going to get was for a commercial premises. Now, if the community shop folded, and as Colin mentioned the other day, a tattooist wants to go in there, we don't have a commercial rent level. We've got a community shop rent level.
Well, if that eventuality happened, and we're sure it won't, but if that eventually happened, then we'd have to revisit it. Simple.
Totally get that. but the whole purpose of the request for the valuation was to be able to benchmark, and that is on which you are now relying that we are benchmarking it. But that exercise isn't required here, because what we have is a rental value by an expert for a community shop, having taken into consideration all the relevant discounts for a not-for-profit use. It should have been what we requested, which was an open market rental value for office space or retail use. That is not what we secured, just to be absolutely clear. So what we have is now advice that has pushed it a little bit further and said, actually, if you use it for this purpose, this is your market rent. This is what you should be getting. So I don't see that we have authority there, or I don't understand the grounds upon which we now go, okay, we can discount it further. I don't understand, but...
You as a council have the power to do that, and you've done it. A proposal's been put forward and it's been voted on.
That's fine, I accept that.
So what's the issue?
Well, the issue is that we're not relying. The issue is, John has just made a point, we're not relying on evidence that we sought to get. And Bob
But
suggested
members have
that
made that decision.
Yeah, but Bob made the comment that we were benchmarking, it was a benchmarking exercise, and we're just clarifying the fact that this actually wasn't what we resolved to secure, and having got it, we have then chosen to disregard it. That is all. You've made a decision, and that's the council decision.
Decision's been made.
Melina.
I'm lost.
Brent Knoll.
I think technically we've had a proposal and a second, we actually haven't voted on it yet.
No. Right. So we want those in favour of the proposal that has been put forward, which is the one that Bob put forward. Who's supporting that? Who's against that? Who's against Bob's proposal? That's 2, so 3 and 7 again. Okay. Right. Job done on that item.
Item 3. Tendering process for the building of the shop and toilets to replace existing toilet block.
Excuse me, can I just water?
The tendering process, I can just update you on that. Paul Martin, our esteemed architect, brought in tonight a whole wad of tendering documents to the value of 5 copies. Now, obviously these will go out to the interested parties, but probably go out electronically in the first instance, and then if they require a hard copy, we can provide them with that. All the information they require is in that pack, and we need to decide at what length of time we give them for tendering purposes. It's normally, Paul Martin tells us about 21 days. I think we originally thought 28 days was probably more reasonable, but again, that's not for you. 28 days effectively takes us to the first part of May, doesn't it? So probably wouldn't quite scrape into the May meeting, actually. But anyway, that's for a future discussion. The tendering process is now underway, as of now, and we can then review those tendering options once we have the information back from the interested parties. Any questions? Okay.
Item 4.5. Updating of rates of interest and PWLB formula process.
John, I think you raised this one, didn't you, actually, in one of your emails. There's a curious situation. The PWLB, the Public Works Loans Board, they're a government-sponsored body. They don't operate under normal commercial interest rate setting regimes. Because it was interesting to note that when interest rates went up last week, their interest rates came down. Because they look at it in the long term, they take a long view of interest rates, they don't look at the short term view that the banks and the building societies take. They say, right, 25-year loan, you know, we predict over a period that this is a reasonable interest rate. And so therefore, to look at the current interest rate levels is not a good guide to looking at what the PWLB will eventually charge us, because we don't know what that will be until we get much closer to the time of actually borrowing the money.
A number of lenders dropped their rates last week.
Yeah,
It's
some of them probably did.
they're looking long term.
Yeah, looking long term. So, you know, once we come to build a loan application, the one thing we should have to do is look at the current interest rates, because they're going up on a daily basis, down on a daily basis. I can't tell you what those rates, I haven't looked today. But the chances are they're around about 4.25, 4.3, something of that order. And I doubt whether it will change much over the next few weeks. It might go up by 0.1, 0.2, and down by 0.1, 0.2. Who knows? But when we come to set the rates with PWRB, then obviously that'll be a matter for the council